Hey everyone. My apologies for the delay here in the start time. Welcome again. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble with my audio here today. I guess we'll wait just a moment as looks like quite a few people joining today. That's great. Switch my controls.
Can you hear me?
John, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Sorry about that, everybody. Had a little bit of trouble with my audio. Well, welcome to our second week. I know we're just a few minutes late. My apologies for that. Thank you for joining us. I hope that your training is going well on week 2. For those of you who've got through week 2, some of you may be through week 1. That's perfectly fine. This is an open forum question and answer session that we have for all of you. The way that this format works, since we have lots of new people, is that we are taking all of your questions through the chat function. And John and I, John Garvins, and because we have lots of new people, we'll give very brief introductions here as well. But John and I are here to just help you answer questions you might have about what you're learning in Salesforce, or anything we can help with in terms of finding a new job or interviewing or preparing for that. Again, disclaimer, our mission is we're not here to give you a job. We're here to help you build skills and develop both business and Salesforce skills to help prepare you for a entry-level Salesforce administrator job. So I'm Jesse Tyler. I am the founder and CEO of MLR here. And for me, I'm here to just help you again on the business side. And with me today is John Garvins, our president. I'll turn it over to him for a quick intro.
Hi, everybody. As Jesse said, my name is John Garvins. I'm president at MLR Consulting Group, and I do consulting here as well, overseeing the consulting practice. I'm glad to have you here today. I know some of you are here for a second time. Some of you are here for the first time. So hopefully you find this sessions helpful in moving forward in your journey.
Thanks, John. And also, Kelsey is supporting us. Kelsey Kane's our HR manager, and she's been integral in Project Hope. So Kelsey, thanks for joining as well. With that, we will open it up. So in the chat function, if you have any questions whatsoever related to your learnings or again in your job search, John and I are happy to help field those and help answer questions for you. And so we'll give everybody a few minutes to just access the chat and type your questions in. So while we're waiting, John, if you don't mind, for questions, I know we have a number of new people, so maybe you can share a brief history for you. You know, John has been, his path to Salesforce administrator and now president of our company is a really interesting story. So maybe you can give a 2-minute story of how you became a Salesforce administrator.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, my family, there's no such thing as a 2-minute story, but I'll try to keep it that way. About a little over 5 years ago, I was working for a software company that had their own custom-built CRM tool. And CRM, if you're still getting familiar with the terminology, is customer relationship management. It's how companies maintain and manage those relationships with their customers. Prior to that job, I was managing a mixed martial arts gym and had gotten familiar with some of the concepts of CRM and what are leads and all the customers and the contact information and things like that. And that was where I first got my start after bouncing all over during my mid-20s. And I took to it really well. The company that I was working for implemented Salesforce, and they needed somebody to administer the system. And I saw that as my opportunity to do so, and decided, hey, I'll take on the extra work and learn this new tool. That led to a year later getting another Salesforce administrator job, and then about a year after that, I got into consulting. Did that for a while, and then after I was consulting for a while, I started teaching Salesforce classes. I've since taught more than 450 people this very specific tool that MLR specializes in, and then got back into consulting after that, eventually joining MLR. But my background originally was in music. I majored in music performance in college. I started as a music education major, but quickly realized that there's a lot of bureaucracy in education that I just didn't want to deal with. And so I went to music performance, in and out of grad school a couple of times, bounced around from restaurants to grocery stores to menswear stores and all sorts of things like that. And eventually found my way into Salesforce. And that's where I am today. And what I found is that and 12 years of Army Reserve experience woven into there as well, as a trombone player. What I found is that all of that eclectic experience, as I like to call it, is helpful in the role that I'm in now, because I get to pull little bits from all over. So whatever your background and experience is, there's a way that you can bring that to this industry and further your career. For example, if you've worked in retail, or if you've worked in restaurants or hotels, you've got customer service experience. And a huge part of what we do as consultants, at least, is customer experience. Or if you're a Salesforce administrator, all of your users are your customers, and you're trying to take care of them and make sure they have what they need. So there are parallels for everything, even if you can't quite see what those are yet.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, John. And again, thanks for your service to our country, and also a very interesting story. And I hope that's inspirational for you to help you all here understand really anybody can become an administrator, as long as you have the aptitude and the drive and desire to complete Project Hope here and then beyond this. Questions have come in. That's awesome. So first, hello, Holly. Thanks for saying hello. Mike Jarvis. Question around recently finished week 1 Monday. Good for you, Mike. Congratulations on that. How long does it typically take to get the subsequent weeks sent out? So when we created Project Hope, our objective was, again, simply to just help folks who are unemployed gain new skills to prepare them for employment. So we made it a focus to get the content available as quickly as we could right away, so people could start with week 1. Week 2 content is already available, so you can already go and go through week 2 content. Week 3 content should be available, I believe, by tomorrow is what we're shooting for. So there should be plenty there for you, and you should have week 2 available to you, Mike. Barry has a question around, in your experience, what is the market like for Salesforce administrators? Maybe I'll throw that to John to kick us off there.
Sure. The market for Salesforce administrators is pretty strong and growing. Salesforce is a company that sells their software on a per user, a certain amount of money per user per month per year, which means that you can basically track the revenue of Salesforce as a company over the years and see how many users they have. And the more users you have, the more administrators you need to take care of the system for all of those users. Salesforce has grown at 20 to 25% year over year for years and years and years, probably over a decade. And what that means is that the need for people with this expertise is continuing to grow. So some industries might be shrinking or staying stagnant, but technology in general always moves forward. Salesforce specifically has been growing a lot. I'm on a website right now called Indeed. And if I just look for jobs with the word Salesforce and administrator in the title, I can find that with a little advanced job search in the past 15 days, let's see here, anytime within 15 days, find jobs. So there are 63 jobs that have been posted in the past 15 days alone. Some of those right now I'm seeing are listed as remote. And so there's new jobs are popping up all the time. There are full-time jobs, there are contract jobs. There are even ways to do freelance work in Salesforce as well, and work with companies in a part-time capacity if that's what you're looking to do.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, John. And John hit on something important. You know, obviously we all know that the whole COVID situation has turned everything upside down, and it's no different in the Salesforce space, except as John said, and I certainly agree with that, the market, there are just way more, there's way much more need from customers, from companies, than there are people to do the job. So I think you're setting yourselves up really, really well for a really high demand skill. And those, as John said, if those were positions that were just posted in the last 15 days, once the whole COVID situation ends, whatever that means, I think you'll see again, it'll just explode. That seems like a fair amount of jobs. Indeed.com, as John said, great resource for you. Holly has a question. After certification, are there other things that employers will look for as far as badges? Holly, I'll start that for you by saying the short answer, as often is the case, is it depends. Many employers will not be that well versed in Salesforce itself. So they won't really understand what a trailhead badge is in many cases. So in those cases for those employers, the certification is going to be kind of the gold standard for, you know, to them, that makes sense. Like, you must know what you're talking about. Other employers that really know Salesforce really well and are very in tune with the ecosystem, some of them are that way, then they'll understand what each of those badges means exactly. And they may or may not place value in, you know, a number of badges. Relative to your learning and preparing yourself, independent of what an employer looks for or does or doesn't look for, it's a great idea to just build up your knowledge and experience through Trailhead and gain as many badges as you're able to, because that means you'll be learning as you go. And that's probably, in my opinion, as an employer, the most important part. Because when you get an interview, nobody cares about any of those things. They start asking you questions. And if you can demonstrate you'd be easy to work with, you're a good person, likable, and they can see you working with their team really well, feel like you'd be very customer oriented or very friendly with customers, and you're knowledgeable about Salesforce, you're going to have an advantage over somebody who maybe aren't all those things but have a bunch of badges. Barry, is it important to list these badges in your resume as keywords? Again, John, I'll take that one. As an employer, I don't think that's that important, quite frankly. You know, in my opinion, it would be more about the totality of your experiences. And again, I would say, rather than keywords in a resume, it is true if you are applying to very large organizations, say somebody who is $1 billion or bigger, giant, very large organizations in the US, they may screen a large volume of resumes by keywords, and that may change them. So if your target is to work for very giant companies and that's what you want to do in the United States, it might be. In my experience, more importantly, is the experiences that you've had. And really, if it was me, I would value the Salesforce Administrator certification over any of those keywords. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Colin, post-Project Hope, do you have any recommendations for training forward on Salesforce? I am currently completing week 2 today/tomorrow with 0 experience, enjoying it so far. Colin, good for you. I'm happy for you. I hope that week 2, so far, you've started to understand what Salesforce is all about, and you're well on your way to being well qualified for a Salesforce administrator job. John, I'll kick it over to you for thoughts on training after Project Hope is over on Salesforce.
Yeah, the great thing about Trailhead is, first of all, that it exists at all. When I started, back in my day, when I started, Trailhead didn't exist. If you wanted to learn something about Salesforce, you either had to scour random blog posts and hope that what you found there was correct. You could go to help.salesforce.com and read their articles, which are not nearly as fun as Trailhead, or you'd have to know somebody who knew how this stuff worked. Thankfully, we have Trailhead now for all of that training. Week 1 through 4 of Project Hope will provide you with a basic foundation going through the admin beginner, admin intermediate, and then there's also an admin advanced trail that's already pre-built for you to walk you through that. There are even some modules on how to prepare for the Salesforce Administrator exam, the Platform App Builder exam, and other Salesforce exams. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think Trailhead has more than 600 badges or something available now. Some people have all of them, so I think their hobby is Salesforce in addition to their job, but there's plenty to learn on Trailhead. I would also encourage you, if you learn better in other ways, to find those other ways. There are bloggers out there there's some excellent blogs out there on Salesforce. You could subscribe to Salesforce's YouTube channels as well. They'll have tons of great videos. I strongly recommend the Who Sees What video sequence on YouTube, which helps you understand how Salesforce security works, which is where a lot of young administrators get tripped up, is how Salesforce's security and data model works. But all of that is available for free on YouTube, blog posts, Trailhead, help.salesforce.com. And as you're looking for jobs, see if there's a Salesforce Trailblazer community group near you. There's one in almost every major city, and that's a good place to meet other people who are interested in Salesforce as well. Chicago has one. Madison and Milwaukee team up to do theirs. San Francisco, New York, Denver, all of these different geographies will have Salesforce user groups. You can learn a lot there too from other people who do this thing, and it's also one of the best ways to meet new people who might know about jobs in the ecosystem.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John. And that's important to note. Week 3's business skills section will be on networking. So learning more about networking and the importance of networking. The short kind of preview to that is networking is really important. That's to say, talking with people who you know in the professional world or even in the personal world, and asking them to introduce you to other people, really, really important for you to find your next job. Moving on to Jamie. Jamie has a question. It is my understanding that to get approved for a remote exam is a challenge, webcam setup, etc. Any tips? John, I don't know if you've got experience with remote exams, but maybe you could speak to that.
I have not personally done a remote exam, though now that we're in the situation we're in, I might have to learn. Our Salesforce practice lead, Kyle Cron, has done pretty much all of his exams remote. From what I understand, you have to have one setup looking at your screen and then a webcam setup looking at you. I'm not sure how all of those different things work. I've often gone to a testing center. You'll find testing centers almost everywhere. And you go in and you check in, they give you a few scratch pieces of paper and a pencil and then take you into the testing room. That's the approach that I've often chosen when it was available. Now, with the certifications having to be remote because testing centers are closed, you would need a couple of webcams. There are detailed instructions once you get that far, and perhaps I can make a training video as well on how to actually register for those exams and how to sign up for them and things like that. For now, I would focus on completing weeks 1 through 4, getting into that advanced administrator trail as well and completing that. And then there's also a prep course. I might even do a session in a future week on how to actually prepare for the administrator exam and drill into testing strategies and the types of questions you're going to see, et cetera. There are even I think it's $20 to do a practice exam directly from Salesforce. And then you'll see a lot of folks out there trying to sell practice exams and things. And I've heard some are very good. Some people claim to even have dumps of the exam questions themselves. I would certainly steer clear of anything that claims it's a dump of the actual exam. And even the practice exams through bloggers, I would take them with a grain of salt. The only thing that I would trust is legitimate is from Salesforce itself, because it's very thoroughly reviewed. There's a whole very in-depth process around creating test questions, which random blogger on the internet does not have access to. So that's how I would think about some of the preparation for that.
Yeah, thanks, John. And we will, Kelsey is taking notes diligently for you. And so we will be adding some of the responses that we have here. Of course, the video is recorded. So we'll be following up with additional resources to help you get answers to some of these questions and help you get on your way to an entry level, we call it, or sometimes call it SF admin job. I am moving on here. So next question from iPad. What is the average pay for a Salesforce admin entry level position? I think iPad, that's a great question. Again, the answer is it depends. You're going to find quite a range there. We can provide this too. I just was preparing a response to you. This is definitely not going to be, any one job is going to be a little bit different potentially, but I'm going to post in the recording here for you in the chat a link that you can all follow that gives you at least one perspective on what that Salesforce administrator job is. That says if you don't want to follow a link or can't, it shows a range between $48,000 annually all the way up to $97,000 annually. I would say, and then I'll turn it to John for his perspective too, for entry level, you're probably going to be at or a little bit above that $48,000 annually. Again, any employer can set it wherever they want. So it might be higher than that, might be lower than that, but that would be what directionally I think you're in that $48,000 to $50,000 a year would be a reasonable salary. John?
Yeah, I think what Jesse said was pretty spot on. A lot of it is based on market conditions. So if you're living in New York, you'll have a very different range than you would if you were living in the middle of nowhere in Illinois, for example. So your market will be a little bit different based on where you live. That said, I think the lowest I've seen is maybe 40K or something like that. That's going to tend to be close to the floor. You don't see too much below that in terms of total compensation. That said, I've also seen Salesforce administrator roles. I had a friend who I think her offer was, somebody offered her something like 110 or 120. Now she's a seasoned Salesforce administrator. So you can work as a Salesforce administrator and get to six figures as a Salesforce administrator. Those Salesforce administrator jobs are more rare. I think what you'll find is that most Salesforce administrator jobs tend to be in the range that Jesse shared, somewhere around $60,000 to $80,000 per year. But of course, there are exceptions on the outsides of that bell curve. You'll have some roles where it's less, some roles where it's more. What's the main factors that will be playing into that are going to be company size. So Facebook, would, for example, would pay more for a Salesforce administrator than Acme Corp that has 50 employees, for example. So the company size is going to be a big driver of that. Where the location is geographically will be a big driver of that. talent surpluses or talent shortages. Thankfully, there's still very much a talent shortage right now in the Salesforce ecosystem, but it is still competitive. So it'll take work, but it's doable. And a lot of people are surprised, I know I was, at how quickly they grew their career and their salary in the Salesforce ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I've been in technology since 1996. So 24 years now in technology roles and in leadership roles, where I was responsible for hiring a variety of different roles over the course of my career. And I think Salesforce administrator jobs are definitely one of have a very high entry point as it relates to salary and compensation. But also, if you invest in your career, once you land one of those entry-level jobs and you gain real-life experience doing the work and investing in things like Trailhead and continuing to not only gain badges, which is helpful, but even more importantly, turning those badges into another certification and then another certification, you'll have, as John said, very high upside, and it will be within reach for you for sure for a six-figure, i.e. $100,000 plus annually salary. So what's really nice about it is it's internal. It's up to you. You get to decide if you can invest the time and energy and have the drive and desire. Salesforce has all of the resources available to you, and many of our consultants here at MLR who have multiple certifications have used Trailhead just like you're all doing to both get started, but also to help advance their career. So it's always a combination of experience and what you've already done, real life, as well as those certifications. That's an important part and recipe for a career. The next question that we have here, thank you, Holly. It sounds like Salesforce may have waived the webcam requirement, so that's good to know. Certainly the world is changing rapidly, and that sounds like that would make it easier for those of you who may not have a webcam once you get there to take the certification exam. So thank you, Holly. Mike Jarvis, do you have any numbers / data on those who have completed the 4 weeks and have gone on to secure a role? Mike, thanks for that question. We are not through the first 4 weeks. We launched the program 2 weeks ago. So as of this date, nobody has completed the 4 weeks because the content is not available to them. By next week, we should start to see people rolling through the program. As the program, as this is related to that question, MLR's goal from the beginning has just been to provide you with access to services, basically access to training materials, and also access to our knowledge about how to begin a career in the Salesforce ecosystem, how to begin, preparing for interviews for administrator jobs. It hasn't been our goal to keep track of where everybody is and whether or not they're progressing in that. I think it's very important, and we obviously want every one of you to succeed in completing the 4 weeks, because that will put you in a good position to be qualified for a role. But like many, many other activities, and we have them at MLR too, we're leading you down the path to help you understand what you need to be learning about and guiding you in what's important, from both a Trailhead perspective to get started, but also a business skill. But it has not been our goal to track your progress and do things like that. So it's a very fair question, and under normal circumstances, any training program you get is probably exactly what people are trying to do. We just wanted to help you, and we just wanted to get you going. I hope every one of you take this and turn it into a job and a career in Salesforce. But once the program's over, we'll have resources and things like that for you, and you'll have a new network connection with those of us at MLR. But you'll find your own positions, and we're looking forward to helping you get to that point. Jamie, looks like provided some resources there. Thank you so much. Holly, for those like me who are inexperienced, in addition to the admin cert, do you recommend a secondary cert? I keep hearing about Pardot. Is it beneficial to have both? Can they be used at one employer, or is it just best to pick one lane? Holly, I can give you from a business perspective, and then John can certainly share with you from the certification perspective and those kinds of things. What I would say to you all, consider what you want to do with your careers and what your interests are. So in Holly's example, she keeps hearing about Pardot. Pardot is a technology, sort of a part of the Salesforce ecosystem, if you will. It's a technology that lives in the Salesforce world that's really focused on marketing. So if you're if you have interest in marketing or being a marketer, Pardot would probably be a technology that you would want to learn more about and pursue because it aligns with what your career interests are. Salesforce has a number of technologies within its platform or within its ecosystem that cater to a whole host of different interests. So Pardot is one, marketing. There are other solutions also that cater more towards marketing. You know, if you come out of a manufacturing world and you're really interested in manufacturing and building things, those types of things, they have technology solutions that may pique your interest and you can go down that route. So the short answer is, if you're interested in marketing, then Pardot might be something that you want to pursue, but they have a wide range of technologies that cater to interests across the board. So I'll turn to John for anything you'd like to add there.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. Regarding the certifications, there are a lot of it, like everything. I'm a consultant after all. It depends. It depends on where you want to go. So to Jesse's point about marketing, if marketing and sending mass emails or doing social media things and updating websites and doing all of that, if that is of interest to you, there are Salesforce products for that. If you're more interested in sales, there are products associated with that. Salesforce's core product is called Sales Cloud, which you started to learn about with leads and accounts, contacts, and opportunities. There are other products as well that deal with call centers and customer support. So if you have maybe a background in customer support, there are products that help out with that too. And then there are other rabbit holes that you can dive down, such as my expertise in a product called CPQ, which is configure, price, and quote. It's all about products, pricing, discounting, sending quotes and proposals to customers. And that's my area of specialization and expertise. When you're thinking about certifications, here are a couple of things to keep in mind. First, the administrator certification, that's the ground level. That's table stakes. It's the first certification we all take. It says, I have a broad understanding of this platform. After that, I would strongly encourage a person to take the advanced administrator certification because there's a lot of overlap with the administrator certification. So by the time you studied with one, you've done 50% of your studying for the other. I would also encourage right after that to look into the platform app builder certification. And between those three, administrator, advanced administrator, and platform app builder, that sets a nice solid floor of understanding for what you have. If you're interested in getting into consulting, there are various product-specific certifications with the word consultant in the title: Sales Cloud Consultant, Service Cloud Consultant, Community Cloud Consultant. Those consultant certifications are beneficial, particularly if you want to work for a consulting company like MLR, and there are hundreds of consulting companies on the Salesforce App Exchange. If you wanted to look for that, App Exchange is one word. You can go there and check out consulting partners and get a list of potential employers you might want to work for one day. What I think, speaking more broadly about sales, just career strategy, it's good to be known for something. I am the person who can help you with this specific thing. It feels weird to narrow yourself because you think, oh, if I narrow myself and I limit what I'm telling everybody I do, then I'm going to get rid of lots of potential opportunities. Maybe, but if you're most interested in this thing and you're known for that thing, your opportunities can actually explode. Because of the expertise that I developed on my specific product, I don't do everything in Salesforce. I do this one thing, but I do it better than a whole lot of people. And that has helped me grow my career very rapidly. And a lot of times, once you want to cross that six-figure line in the Salesforce ecosystem, having a specialization is a strategy you can employ to help you cross that line.
Cool. Thanks, John. I think we've covered all the questions so far. So if I've missed any, my apologies, and please do repost them. If you have additional questions, again, we have about 20 minutes remaining here, a little more than 20 minutes. So John and I are happy to continue helping you gain clarification on what you need to know about either Trailhead or Salesforce or the program, or many of you have asked Jobs about the Salesforce administrator role and what that pays and all of those types of things. We're very happy to spend this time with you to answer those questions. So we'll give you another minute to think about questions you may want to ask. While we're waiting, John, you mentioned the good foundation that is needed, or at least that you'd recommend, and I certainly agree with that, around the certification side of it. Can you talk a little bit about, we have the certifications and knowledge around that, and that's super helpful, but also sort of the importance of just bringing the experiences like you did before that Salesforce administrator job. Excuse me. So now I'm thinking about, if you're in an interview and somebody asks you about your experience as an administrator, for those of you in this program, probably most of you are going to say, I don't have any. But you want to highlight, as John alluded to earlier in this discussion, the life experiences or other professional experiences that you bring. Can you give a couple examples of, if you were in an interview, John, where you might be using your own life experiences or customer service experiences, or those things, to enhance your interview in the eyes of somebody who is making a hiring decision?
Sure. Yeah, I have an eclectic background, so it lends itself well to situations like this. I didn't start in technology. I started in music education, then moved into all the other stuff from there. So in an interview for a Salesforce administrator job, some of my first ones, I was very lucky in that I got some experience, and that helped when I got further down the road. But when you're just starting off, thinking through, okay, what does this job require? Looking at that job description, and then asking yourself for each one of those bullets, have I done that or something like that in the past? And helping the interviewer connect the dots between here's where I was and here's where I'm going, and helping them connect the dots between those 2 points. For example, if I'm being interviewed for a Salesforce administrator job and they ask something about, have I had experience, training Salesforce users and how to do something? Well, my answer to that question at the time would have been, well, no, I don't have experience doing that. I haven't done it before. But when I was a trombone section leader in the Army Reserve, I had to hold sectionals to work through different pieces of music with my section. So we would take the music and we would break it down into tinier pieces, and we would work on each section at a time, and I would train them here. Or when I was working on the dairy team at Whole Foods, putting yogurts on shelves, I had to teach all the new employees who came in, here's how we do things here. And I showed them where everything was. I showed them how things worked. I helped them get started. I would get them caught up if they got behind a little bit, etc. So finding a thread there. Or if they said, what experience do you have in databases? Well, I had done an internship in the archives of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. They record every concert, and I was doing data entry. They'd record a concert, I'd take the program, and I would line up when the music started with the program, which was fun because I got to listen to great music all day, and I was getting some experience in a database. So that helps me understand how data worked and how databases work and the importance of data integrity and data quality, because if somebody's searching for a concert and they can't find it, well, that's a bad user experience for them. So those are a couple of examples of how something I've done that's completely unrelated ties to something that I'm trying to do now. There's usually a way to connect it. You just have to be creative sometimes in thinking through, how do I actually connect this experience over here with this one over here? And the way I do that is I look at each bullet and I ask myself, have I done this? If so, great. Write down that I did that, and then figure out how that, what's the story for that bullet that applies to me? And if I haven't done it, have I done something that's close where I can help the interviewer bridge that gap? And then I'll create a story for that. People remember stories. So as you're looking at all these different bullets on the job description, find out, what is my story for this bullet? What's my story for that bullet? And that will help the interviewer remember, because humans remember stories.
I think that's great advice. And we do have one more question. I'll get to that in a moment. Do you say that Chalpin? I apologize if I'm not saying your name right, Chalpin. As a fun exercise and hopefully a help to you, if you're interested, if you like, post in the chat what your profession has been up to this point. And if you do that, John and I can probably just brainstorm ways of where whatever your profession is might connect to a Salesforce administrator type job.
Yeah,
so please, please do post that in the chat if you're interested. And while you're doing that, we will answer Chalpin's question. As a newbie, how can I gain hands-on experience to help put experience on resume and on for an interview? Chalpin, I think when you go to an interview, so the first thing I'd say, again, from the business side, I'm more in that part of it, and from the employer perspective, and John certainly comes from the, can share a ton about the Salesforce stuff. The first thing I would say to all of you is, if you're in an interview and if your experience is, I've went through Project Hope, I learned a lot of Trailhead stuff, and I've learned some fundamental knowledge about Salesforce, that's how you want to represent yourself in terms of your knowledge and what you know. I've interviewed in my lifetime, probably by now, thousands of people. I have had experiences where people, they really want the job, right? And they really want to work there. And so in an interview, they might exaggerate a little bit about what their experience are. Or I'd even dare say I have had people who downright just aren't truthful. They say they did something when they really didn't. And in this day and age, I would encourage you to recognize that's a very risky proposition. You might really need this job or really want to have this job, and you might think to yourself, well, maybe I'm going to stretch the truth a little bit or exaggerate on what my experience is. This is just my opinion, everybody. I think that's a very bad idea, because there's a decent chance that the interviewer will do further investigation. They might ask for references, or they might look at your experiences as a whole, and they might be very experienced, like John, and then they might start asking you more detailed questions and uncover that maybe you're not telling us the full truth. It's the fastest way to be kicked out of the interview process. If there's a feeling that there's not much truth to this story, you're not going to get that job, everybody. So your best bet is to just be, hey, I have the certification. I have a tremendous amount of experience with Trailhead, and I've learned a whole lot. This is my first Salesforce job. And as John is saying, and also as we'd be happy to share, to John's point, tell a story about how your customer experience relates to serving customers at that company, or in other tactics that help enhance your credibility when you're in the position you're going to be in, which is your experience as an administrator is you're brand new. Here's the last point I want to make to you all. Every single one of us at our company, and every single person in the Salesforce ecosystem, and there are hundreds of thousands of them, started in your shoes. They all had their first Salesforce job, and they figured out a way to make it, and you will too. John, anything to add to that?
Yeah. If you think of everything as maybe a prioritization pyramid, so to speak, what is at the very tip top of that pyramid as far as what you ideally want to be able to put on your resume? First and foremost, of course, it's experience, right? Experience, you could take a class, you could read a book on jujitsu, but until you've done jujitsu, I've done jujitsu for 8 or so years as well. So that's where that example comes from. You can read a book on it, but unless you train and do it, then you're not really going to know it. So of course, real world experience at a real job is ideal, but it's that chicken and the egg. Well, I can't get a job without experience, and I can't get experience without a job. And you get caught in this weird circle. I got caught there myself, and it's frustrating and it's aggravating. But something you can do in the absence of real world experience is one step below that, in my opinion, and that's virtual experience. You can create as many free Salesforce developer orgs as you want. They'll let you create hundreds of them. I've probably got hundreds created for me over the years. What's great about that is that you can think about maybe the coffee shop that you go to all the time. There's a coffee shop downstairs. If they had Salesforce, how would they run their business? Interesting. Okay. My brother works for a nonprofit. How would they run their nonprofit using Salesforce? Or my mentor and now employee, Scott, when he was first learning Salesforce, he was really into marching band in college. So one of the things he did was he made an app using in Salesforce to track the inventory of marching band uniforms and instruments and music. So he created a library inside of Salesforce so he could categorize and organize the music in the music library. Or if I was, let's think of a company, if I was Google, right? If I'm Google and I'm trying to sell G Suite to big businesses, how might I do that? And then try to build that into Salesforce. So look around you at all the businesses you frequent, places you've worked in the past, and start connecting the dots between, okay, I used to work in a restaurant. How could I tie restaurants into Salesforce? Imagining that people were going into the restaurant and that's an opportunity to sell them some food and things like that. So you can get very creative about that. So I'd say experience is first, creating your own projects and things is second, getting those Salesforce certifications, especially initially, you basically got your certifications and your years of experience. Well, in the absence of years of experience, I would double down on those certifications and crank through as many as you can until you can start getting that real world experience. And then I would pivot the focus to getting more and more real world experience. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, thanks, John. So we have about 9 minutes left. Chopin has another question. Is it possible for you to give us a real life project, which we can put on a resume as experience? The closest thing you're going to get to that is, again, by going through the content and Project Hope. You will actually perform hands-on, that's real life Salesforce work. So those are, it's representative of the real life things you would do in relation to manipulating accounts and contacts and making fields and all this sort of stuff. That is exactly what you'll be doing in real life. So while you can't say, I was a Salesforce admin at XYZ company for 1 year before I came to this interview, you won't be able to do that if you haven't. You will have real life hands-on experience. And so my advice to you, Chopin, and others would be, when you're looking and searching for Salesforce administrator jobs, you want to keep your focus narrowed on the ones that are, 1 year experience or less. You don't want to be applying for jobs that are requiring 3+ years experience. It'd be unlikely that you would find yourself in an interview from that type of a role. So stay focused on the entry-level roles, and then you'll get your first year of experience, and then your career will blossom from there. Holly, most of my experience is that, thank you for sharing that, Holly. Administrative assistant, executive assistant, working with kids, restaurant server artists. You have a lot of experience there to draw from. And I think, to me, as soon as I saw that in the roles you were in, that means you're interacting and communicating with people on a regular basis. You probably had, I need you to do this right now. So you probably gained experience in sort of urgent scenarios where somebody needs something right away and effective at that. Those skills are translatable in that as an administrator, Salesforce administrator, you're going to have people come to you and say, Holly, I need you to do this, create this report for me right now. And with your experience as an administrative assistant, you're used to that sort of style. And so it's not all about the technology, everyone. It's again about the experience you can bring, such as an administrative assistant, and I need to do something right now and get it done and move on to the next thing. That's what life will be like in many Salesforce administrator positions. And hiring managers like to hear about those experiences because that is a big part of every job.
Right. And I would add to that and say, you mentioned your bachelor's in business and information management. That's great. I would definitely focus on that. One thing you might want to think about is going back to your transcripts or reflecting on the classes that you took. And in that bullet where you're listing your education, well, why not also add, here's what I learned when I was in there. One of the biggest gaps that I see in young Salesforce professionals who are just getting started out, or new Salesforce professionals rather, since some people start in their 40s, 50s, even 60s learning Salesforce, is to remember that it's business technology. It's not technology business. The business comes first. So what's valuable to employers like Jesse and myself is when you're able to think like a business person who understands the technology, because if, a person can learn how to make a field in Salesforce in a few minutes of YouTube, but do you know why the field needs to exist? Do you know what the executives are trying to figure out or trying to learn about their business by the creation of this field in the first place? Maybe they're trying to figure out, we've been thinking about changing our marketing strategy and we want to know what are our most valuable industries today so we can double down on those, and what are the industries that don't work for us so we can stop focusing on that and focus on the stuff that is working. So being able to connect, I made a field in Salesforce to help the chief marketing officer better understand our industries of our biggest customers so we can optimize our marketing content to focus on that and get a big win. Being able to connect those dots for the business and act like a translator between the technology and the business is a hugely valuable skill set.
Yeah, we have 4 minutes left, and we have quite a few experiences coming in. So thank you so much, everyone, for sharing those. I want to make sure that we cover those 4 minutes. A couple of you are in marketing. So the question came up about Pardot. In your marketing experience, you may, if you've already had systems experience working with something like Marketo or even some simpler email automation tools, you've already got a lot of experience with systems. So those experiences are things you can highlight in an interview and talk about. I've already dealt with marketing automation, for example. We use Marketo and we use MailChimp at my past job. Salesforce is, as John said, just another business technology. That would be one way you can relate your experience.
Mm-hmm.
Colin worked at a Quick Trip. So again, I think you're spot on. You if it was me, I would highlight my customer service experience. And then Colin too, I know for a fact, there's a company called Riiser, R-I-I-S-E-R, that uses Salesforce. So there are many convenience store type organizations. I'm not sure about Quick Trip that use Salesforce. In your case, you might try to find other convenience store type businesses, and you have the industry experience, which is really, really important too. So that might be your bonus, if you will, on the interview. And I absolutely agree with you in time management and customer service and those things as well.
Yeah, I see Barry also mentioned he did spend 3 years working an in-house IT project to create a CRM and CPQ tool. You're speaking my language, is CPQ. Salesforce CPQ specifically, Barry, if you're interested in CPQ stuff, there's a ton of demand for CPQ talent out there. It's if you know CPQ, you're still pretty much a unicorn at this point. And so if you're looking for a place to focus in a niche, that's a great one. Pardot's a great niche. Marketing Cloud, CPQ. Everybody starts with Sales Cloud. And so it's hard to differentiate yourself on Sales Cloud and to stand out from the crowd, which is where saying I can do Sales Cloud. And also I can do this other niche product over here that can be helpful as well.
Mike adds that, Mike, you were a program manager on the functional side in healthcare devices industry. All of your responses help me think about for all of you, again, when you're thinking about how to be well qualified for a Salesforce administrator role, you're all bringing up very important point around industry. So when you're interviewing, I have personal experience with this in my own walk. I went from IT to human resources, and then I went from a co-op, a dairy cooperative, into a pharma company. Industry experience matters, and when you interview, they ask you, well, what experience? And if you can talk, Mike, for you about the healthcare devices industry, naturally, if you are applying for a Salesforce admin job at a healthcare devices industry, you're going to have a huge advantage over somebody who might be a more experienced administrator but doesn't know anything about your industry, because you know how to, when somebody comes and asks you for something in a healthcare devices industry, can I get this, this, and this out of Salesforce? Mm-hmm. You have the industry experience to understand what exactly it is they're talking about. You don't have to say, I don't know what you mean. Can you explain that? That's a huge advantage. So think about your industry too, and whatever industry you're coming out of today, that might be a spot where you want to target. Once you get through this program and get your certification, I would highly encourage you to target the same industries. That'll be the quickest way to be qualified for a new job there.
Well, Mike, even a Salesforce Health Cloud product, which is specifically geared towards healthcare and life sciences, or you have this device experience. So all these medical device manufacturers, there's tons of opportunities there, I'm sure. So I would definitely look in that direction. It's sort of product expertise plus industry expertise, which is the very thing we do as a consulting firm too.
Yep.
So how do I separate myself and differentiate from the pack?
Yep. And Mike, that what John referred to there, Health Cloud, would be get your admin stuff squared away. And then Health Cloud, like Pardot, a previous example, and others, is another technology that once you get the admin layer, then you can start to focus on that type of technology. And that's a great point. In healthcare, that's a big solution. We're out of time today, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on the Q&A. I hope it was valuable for you all. Again, we're recording this session, so it is available to you. And if you have other friends that are going through the program and weren't unable to attend, you can certainly let them know that the recording's here. Kelsey will be compiling some resources for you based on some of the questions you've asked that you can refer back to as the program progresses. So, John, thanks for all of your insights.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. It's I learned stuff on these calls too.
Best of luck to you all. Keep up the good work and stay. The weeks are going to get bigger now, so in terms of time commitment. So stick with it. I hope you're doing a good job of making the time, and most of all, I hope you're beginning to get traction, assuming you're unemployed, at finding your next job, and hopefully this helps. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you next week.